When it comes to building a seven-figure company, it's not as easy as everyone on social media makes it sound. So today I brought on my COO, Alec, who is also one of my first clients, to come through here and just give you the raw truth. No more BS. We're just going to lay it out for you. We're going to be honest about what's easy and we're going to be honest about what's hard.
The number one thing that I would not do if I wanted to build a seven-figure business would be to expect immediate results for literally anything that I do. Like, I changed my mindset to thinking 90 to 120 to 150 days out on literally anything. Fitness, business, anything I was going to put energy into, I was going to decide ahead of time that I was going to commit to something for 3 to 6 months before deciding on whether it's the right thing to do or not.
However long you expect something to happen, at minimum, double it. So if you think it's going to take you 2 hours to create an ad, double it. Schedule that. And it's the same thing with business growth. If you think you're going to hit 100K months in 4 months, expect 8 months. And then guess what? If you hit it on month 5, you're excited. When it comes to building a seven-figure company, it's not as easy as everyone on social media makes it sound. So today I brought on my COO, Alec, who is also one of my first clients, to come through here and just give you the raw truth. No more BS. We're just going to lay it out for you. We're going to be honest about what's easy and we're going to be honest about what's hard. So Alec, appreciate you joining me today, dude. Are you excited to talk to the people about what it really takes?
Yeah, I'm excited to spill the beans, let all the people know how hard it is and how exciting it is.
Yeah, so for everyone that's on here that doesn't know you or how we got acquainted and how you're a part of my company now, why don't you just give a quick story about like how all that worked out?
Yeah, so I remember this was back in the ancient days of Facebook groups for us, but I think it was like 2019 was the initial first time that I had talked to Justin. It was like in this Facebook group or whatever. Then I like friend requested him on Facebook, and I think we're like chatting. This was before, I think back when he was doing agency stuff. It was when I was in college. And I remember seeing him go to like a Grant Cardone conference. It was the 10X conference. And I remember being like, oh my God, like that's so crazy. He's got a balcony. He's in Miami. He's at the 10X growth conference. Like I want to be doing that. And that's initially how we got connected. I was just following him on social media, seeing what he was posting about when he was traveling, going to events and things like that. And then, I bought his first course that summer, the summer that I graduated college, and that taught me how to prospect and do cold DMs on social media.
Yeah. And you didn't just buy my first course. You bought literally every course/program I released from there. And I think, people always say, like, how do you find good talent to bring onto your team? It's like, look within. Yeah. I mean, I brought you on board and I brought other people on board that's all worked with me at some point in our life. And it's just been, you understand the process, you understand like how we operate. And I think those are like the best hires it takes, because when it comes to building a seven-figure company, one of the hardest things that people don't really talk about is bringing on good A-player plus talent. And I know that's something that you're really good at, because when you came on, started working inside my company, you brought on a lot of good talent. So let's talk a little bit about that, man. What do you look for when you're bringing on new talent and hiring?
Yeah, I would say the first thing that I look for, and it's the same thing that I've operated within my own companies, is I always look for the person. And that's really, really hard to do in an interview. Like that's hard to do. You can do personality tests. You can have people fill out forms. You can have them videotape themselves. You can talk to them for hours. But unless you like really spend time with somebody, it's really hard to figure out, like, is this person going to be a cultural fit in my company? Like, are they going to be able to, move like in the same ways that we move, or make decisions the same way of us, understand why we're doing things so we don't have to re-explain our thinking process, and are ultimately just on the same page. So that is part of the reason why a lot of times it is easier to hire people that have already been, like for me, I'd already been through like all of the courses, literally anything Justin's ever sold. So it's like I already knew every single thing that was a part of anything he's ever taught. So, and then I also clearly, because of that, knew and liked Justin. And so culturally, I had all the knowledge, and then culturally I was a really good fit, because I was like, okay, we get along, we like each other, and I understand everything, and I'm willing to work.
Yeah. I call it the 4-hour rule. And I think it really depends on what part of the sector of your business you're hiring. Obviously, this wouldn't work for like VAs, or, I mean, maybe it does for setters or SDRs. It just really depends on how engaged you are with your company and how much time you're spent. But like for someone that you are spending a lot of time with, training or meeting with on a weekly basis, call it the 4-hour rule. Could I spend 4 hours in a room like this with this person? If I say no, I'm not going to hire him. And I made that mistake. I bent the rules previously in the past, and every single person that I bent the rules for, They're not here for a reason. So if you're looking, one of the easiest things is the 4-hour rule, especially if you're going to be training someone a lot, whether it's a setter, like our first setter that we brought on board, Alexa, back in the day. I asked myself, I'm like, can I spend 4 hours in a room with this guy? And I could. And he did really, really well. Granted, Alexa learned too much inside our business and then had to go off and start his own business, which I'm very proud of him. He's balling. He's over in Serbia. He's making like 30, 40, 50 grand a month in Serbia just with setters and social media marketing, just from the strategies that he's learned from like being a part of our company. So I think when it comes to hiring and firing, I think people don't do it fast enough. I know we've fallen guilty to that a couple of times as well, but like that's a big thing when it comes to building a 7-figure business. A lot of people don't talk about because like, oh yeah, go hire a done-for-you sales rep, or go hire a done-for-you setter, or done-for-you ads manager, whatever it might be. And I, to this day, still don't know any company that can do that successfully and actually work. Because granted, there are companies that can do that, but there has to be additional trainings and additional resource, and it can't just be that whole thing. Because I know we do some done-for-you services inside our business, but that's not what we're all about. And we only do that because we want to provide for our own clients. So what are your thoughts on like done-for-you services and all those, hey, give me 20 grand and I'll build out your entire sales team and all this stuff? Like, what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, well, I think that ultimately, when you think about the most valuable things that, like, let's say for us, right? So for a coaching company, what are the most valuable things? We talk about this when people join your program, but for us, it comes down to like ultimately 3 things, and then you can add systems onto the back end of it. But it's like marketing, setting, and sales, specifically for our process. So for us, like if those are the most important, that's the lifeblood of your business. If you can bring in quality clients, if you can turn those eyeballs into set appointments on the calendar, and then you can close those appointments on the calendar. Well, if you delegate too much of that process and it breaks, you're screwed. Like you can't fix it because you don't know how it was set up, right? So if you're able to learn how to set up the marketing campaigns, how to set, and then how to close, ultimately, if anything at any point in time something breaks, you can go and fix it because you know how it works. You know how it's set up. You hired the people. You set up the systems for it. So ultimately, if you try to delegate too much, you're going to delegate yourself out of being able to fix the problem.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer of that as well, too, because everything in this business I've built up from the groundwork where I could do anything and everything that happens. And exactly what you said is, people want to take the lazy route. And like, granted, I think there is a time and a case where you can make that happen. If you're already, doing $1 million a month and you're doing a different thing and you're like, oh, I want to invest in this business and hire it all out. Yeah, that makes sense. But granted, for the most of the people watching this, you need to learn the skills. You need to learn how to do it because, as Alex said, like if something breaks, who's going to fix it? If you don't know how to fix it, who else is going to learn how to fix it?
Well, nobody cares more than you do, right? So especially, I mean, again, it does depend at the level you're at and all that stuff. But if you are less than $100,000 a month, like for example, a media buyer typically is not going to be able to know as much as you, and they're definitely not. I have a marketing agency, like I understand, but for that purpose, we're extremely niche down because we know exactly what we need to do every single time. And in like the coaching or consulting industry, there's like thousands of industries. So if you don't know the process, like you can't fix it, you can't improve it. So you can't really delegate or do too much done for you until you get to a certain level. Like it's usually the opposite way. People want done for you ads and done for you setting and done for you sales before they've actually figured it out for themselves. And we think about it the opposite. It's like we have to know, even before we were to delegate something like that, you have to know how to do it yourself because otherwise you can't control the process.
Yeah, and I think you said one thing really important that we've noticed a lot of our clients messing up on is there's really 3 buckets to a client acquisition system, if you will. Now, there's a lot more that goes into scaling a business, but there's the marketing bucket, there's a setting bucket, and then there's a sales bucket. Clearly, there's like fulfillment and stuff, but we're not going to talk about that for this example. These are the 3 buckets where I think people just get confused way too much. And a lot of times marketing will be working, but setting or sales isn't working, so they blame marketing. And that's kind of like what we developed inside our company is we give all of our clients a KPI tracker. So when they come on and say, hey, here's the issues I'm running into, we look at the tracker. We already know what buckets can be. 9 times out of 10 when a client comes on, we can be like, that's your problem. But I'd like to hear your thought because you're a lot more involved with the CSM, the clients now as well. What's like the biggest thing out of those buckets where you see like people kind of mismatching, misunderstanding, and making errors on?
Well, I mean, most not like we have a joke that like 95% of the time when somebody says that their ads aren't producing, it's typically a setting issue.
That's no joke. Like that's actual real facts,
Yeah.
by the way.
Yeah, literally like 95% of the time somebody says, "Oh, my ads aren't working. It's not bringing in quality leads." It's really not, and it kind of it sucks because you have to go through the setting process in general is so nuanced. Like people think about, okay, well, if somebody's interested in my services and they message me like, "Oh, awesome. Like that's great." Like they're going to buy. They're going to start throwing money at me. It's like it's really not that case because especially with setting, like if you don't do it at a high level, like the difference between doing it okay and doing it really well is a massive difference. I mean, it's literally the difference between having a 1x or a 2x and like a 10 or a 20x, just that nuanced process, but it takes some time and development. Like you really have to understand your demographics. Like you really have to spend some time learning and testing out different ways of speaking and things like that. But literally 95% of the time, it's actually a setting thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to add on to that too as well, because we've had a lot of clients come through that are, big name clients, have a big following, and they can crush organic. But as soon as they start running ads to cold traffic, it's like we've reviewed some conversations like, what are you saying to these people? Like, you're not going to convert somebody like that. So like, I think that's a big misconception in the space too, is like, if you're doing good at organic, awesome. But cold traffic is an entire different beast to tap into. But once you do tap into it, it's night and day difference. And it's the absolute best way to scale. And I think that's something new that I've been kind of talking about is like, you look at my Instagram, I post maybe 1-3 max posts a month at this point, but my profile, we get 3 million views every single month. And it's because of how we've tapped into paid ads. And then also the strategy that we use to retarget people. So they see my content every day, like I'm posting every day, but it's like, I'm a CEO. I'm not creating content every day. Like I used to do that to try to go viral to get more clients. And that's a whole nother subject, is trying to go viral to get clients, which it definitely can work, but it's very time consuming. And what we've developed here, and I think what our clients use the best, is just a very simple approach to create content, 1 to 3 pieces of content a month that are very strategic, to go out there and speak to an ideal type of avatar in their ads. Because if you're not speaking to the right type of people, you're going to be getting the wrong type of people in your ecosystem.
Yeah, it also just, each business is different, right? Like we're not going to sit up here and say like, oh, and every single business needs to do this the exact same way, right? So for us, the viral content strategy maybe is not the best fit for us. It might be better fits for other types of businesses, but that's when you really have to understand and ideally be able to talk to people who know what they're doing and are able to identify the different sectors and like talk about your demographics and who you're targeting and like where your time is probably best spent based off of the type of people you're trying to target.
Yeah, 100%. And that kind of goes into the other subject of knowing your numbers.
Yeah.
How many people come through our system that actually know their numbers before they start working with us?
None.
That's
like almost none.
Even
really.
Some businesses that come through, and I've seen this, like I've worked with clients like this, they'll be doing 50 to 100K a month, even more than that. And you ask them numbers about their business, like, oh, I have no idea. I just get a bunch of organic deals coming through. And it's like, cool, congrats. But like, if you really want to scale, numbers are the key to growth. And for me growing up, like, man, I never thought I'd be such like a numbers type of guy. Like I was the type of guy in math class. I had my calculator out. I had the equations like written on the back, like, filling in the bubbles, just looking at what the equations were. And it's like, I never thought I'd be a numbers guy, but like once you tap into the numbers, once you understand like how much it costs to book an appointment, how much it costs to get a client, it's like that shit becomes fun because at the end of the day, it's just more dinero coming in your bank account.
Yeah, well, it's also predictable, right? So like you're no longer like guessing and like praying and hoping every month to see like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen this month. You're like, no, this is what we did last month. These are how all of the numbers and KPIs broke down. This is what we did the month before and the month before. These are the decisions you make. And especially when you track and you have your numbers, then you can also decide on what worked, what didn't work, and you're just easier to identify what's not working. And even like we were talking about before, like earlier, is sometimes we've seen people go through and hit 6-figure months, but then they stop doing what got them there, right? So we were talking about like, sustaining a 7-figure company. It's like it's like one thing to hit a 6-figure month once, but it's like another thing to hit a 6-figure month followed by a 6-figure month followed by a 6-figure month. And a lot of that does come down to staying on top of your numbers, like every single morning. Like the number one 7-figure habit is probably sitting down, writing down your numbers and looking at your numbers every single morning before you start your day. It's one of the first things that I do. every single day. As I sit down, I actually have it scheduled in my calendar, like fill out all my numbers, fill out my master tracker, go look at my Airtable, everything like that, so that I can see. And before my team even starts, I already know what we did yesterday. I already know what the numbers are for the month, for the week. And so I can easily delegate and say, hey, I saw this in our numbers. And instead of waiting for the month or a year and be like, oh, what happened? It's like, all right, I know what's happening as it's happening. So I can more accurately tell people what to do to fix it.
The absolute first thing I do every single morning is I check my personal finances, check the business finances, and then I check KPIs for the business on every area of the business. Because like you said, when you're looking at that consistently, you can predict what's going to go right. You can predict what's going to go wrong. And then you can look at your numbers and be like, okay, cool. Well, I'd like to scale, but I don't want to spend more money in ad spend. Okay, maybe I'm not collecting enough cash here. Let me see if I can get my cash collected rate from a 35% to a 48%. Boom, just like that, you're making more money without having to spend more money on ads or without having to hire more people. And most people just think like the best way to scale is simply just do more. But sometimes it's just take a step back and analyze.
Yeah, exactly. But before you built your first 7-figure company, what were the things that you learned from the other, like, was it the numbers? Like, what were the things that you learned from the other 7-figure business owners that you saw that then you realized, like, there may be misconceptions for you when you were at, like, 6 figures that you learned from those people that are like, okay, no, don't do this, or yes, do this, or like, I was wrong about that. I need to do this.
That's a really good question. I remember I'm constantly always investing into skill sets and my business. And I remember there was a lot of businesses, a lot of coaching programs I did invest into. And at the time I'm like, man, dude, this just doesn't work. But a lot of times it's just like each part was a missing puzzle piece that I had to put together. And then once I put it all together, it really worked. Because I remember very specifically, there was one guy's program I was in a while ago, and they were talking about KPIs. And I was doing probably like 10, 20K a month. I'm like, dude, I don't want to know about KPIs. I don't care about KPIs. Fuck math. Like, I don't really care. And it always just sparked something in my head. I'm like, why did I not want to know that? It was just like my egotistical self thinking that I was farther ahead than what I was. And then once I finally like kind of took a step back, I was like, wow, I really have to learn this stuff to grow a business. Everything kind of skyrocketed from there. So I think like a lot of it comes down to dropping your ego when it comes into these things and just being like, all right, you're ahead of me. What can I learn from you? And then implement, and just implement without question. Just implement, figure it out, bring your questions to the person that you're paying. But I think like you always have to have like a North Star, and whether that's a person, whether that's a goal, you have to have something you want to strive for.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when I was working with Justin, like one-on-one, maybe a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago, or maybe a couple of years ago. And I would show up and he'd be asking me like, do you know this number? Do you know this number? What's this? Okay, well, what are you doing here? And I was like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. No, I don't know that. No, I don't know that either. And then what I did was I stopped getting coached. And then I was traveling, whatever, had no idea of any of the numbers. And then I remember when I was getting coached, then we hit, like, I think I hit my first like 3 50K months back to back to back. And I was like, oh, I'm doing it now. Stopped getting coached, just was traveling, wasn't tracking anything until I went all the way down to like 20K a month. And I was like, yeah, I fucked up. Like, I did not listen. I did not know my numbers, because the numbers that could have told me that I was headed in the wrong direction, I would have known 3-4 months before, but I was only looking at the revenue. So I was only looking at how much money we were making, but I wasn't looking at all of the numbers that were probably could have indicated to me, hey, this needs to be fixed. Hey, this needs to be fixed. Hey, this needs to be fixed. But it's just funny because now when I jump on coaching calls, is like I kind of have a rule, or I made this rule that I'll take one call with somebody if they don't have their numbers up to date. But if I'm going into a call with somebody else and they don't have their numbers up to date, I'll cancel that call and tell them to get their numbers up to date and reschedule with me when they have it. Because I can't help them. Like I literally can't tell somebody what to do if I don't know their numbers, because then we're going to be talking about, oh, I feel like I should do this, or I feel like this is not working. I was like, yeah, but if we can see the numbers, then we can just say, oh, this is what we need to focus on. This is what we need to fix.
You said a really big, important thing that I hear all the time and I have to call people out on is I feel. You got to take your emotions out of business. If you're in the point where you're saying, oh, I feel this, you're never going to grow in business. And exactly what you said, when I'm on these coaching calls, sometimes two people come be like, oh, man, I feel like nothing's working. I'm spending all this money on ads and everybody sucks. I'm not closing any deals. All right, bro, let's check out the numbers. Oh, I don't have them up to date. Okay, go get the numbers. Come back to me a week later. Here's the numbers. oh, you mean your cost per acquisition is $500? You're selling a $5,000 program and you feel like it's not working? The fuck you talking about? You're printing money, bro. Most people just don't know when shit's working is the craziest part about it, because they get in their emotions. They don't actually let the numbers tell them the truth.
Yeah, I mean, even like we were talking about this. We were talking about this earlier, but like even what you're talking about, like, oh, I'm spending $500 to close a $5,000 deal, and then I'm spending $60 a day on ads. It's like it's gonna take you like if you were spending $500 a day, technically you'd be closing a 5,000. You'd be making $150K a month, right? Like you'd be at a 10x, but you're just not spending enough money. And it's like, oh yeah, I guess if I do spend more money, it's like, okay, well that's why we have the numbers, because instead of making $10,000 this month, if you just doubled your budget, maybe you'd make $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000. That's the other side that just when you take the emotions out of it, it's like it does, especially when you're starting out and you're like, you start to see that ad spend going up and you're like, damn, I'm spending $200 a day. I'm spending $300 a day on ads. It can make you feel kind of nervous because you're like, maybe you're not used to spending that much money per day. But when you have the numbers and you can say, well, yeah, the numbers are telling me that every time I spend $800 on ads, I close a $5,000 client. Like, yeah, I just need to spend more money on ads. Like, it takes the emotion out of it.
Yeah, I mean, 5 years ago, if you would have been telling me that I'm spending over $50,000 a month on ads and more, I'd be like, absolutely crazy. But I take the emotion out and we can spend it because it makes sense. I mean, I think last month we spent a little over like 60 or something like that, and we're continuing to grow. But I want to kind of move on from that because I think that's a very important part. And one of the biggest mistakes is people just don't know their numbers. But I think one of the big mistakes where a lot of people just can't crack the code to is a predictable client acquisition system. And clearly that's what we built at AIA, and that's what we help a lot of our clients out with. But I think one of the biggest things that most people mess up with that is you ever heard the saying, don't put all of your eggs in one basket?
Yeah.
They literally abide that to their business. And when it's building a client acquisition system, my advice is put all of your eggs in one basket and get that one basket to fucking flourish. And then once you do that, then put eggs in other baskets. What a lot of people do is they're doing maybe 10, 50, even 100K a month. Like, I'm getting clients here. And it's like for AIA, dude, we had one offer, one client acquisition system, and one specific type of ad before we moved anything from AIA, because we were doing 100K months, like 4 months in a row before we introduced any different acquisition source. And even looking back to that, I would have told myself, just keep doing it, keep printing, keep doing it. And I think that's where a lot of people mess up, is they just try to do too many different things. And they think of client acquisition as lead generation. Oh, I just need all these different ways to generate leads. And it's like, if you can't capitalize on one, how are you going to do that with every other one?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same reason why, like, you know, you could be a superstar athlete in high school and play 3 sports, but it's like once you get to college, you typically start to focus on 1, maybe 2 if you're just like a generational talent. But at the pro level, they like Shohei Ohtani, right? He's the only person that's like ever been able to operate that two-way, but all of the other Hall of Fame players, like, they focus on one thing, right? They focus on becoming the best that they possibly can at that one thing, and it just narrows their focus, right? They're not thinking about this thing over here or this thing over here. They're like, no, I'm going to be completely focused on this one thing, simplify everything, and then I'm not distracted by, oh, maybe let me do this. Because the other thing too is like the shiny object syndrome. It's like everybody's like, oh, I heard that this guy did this, and then he scaled his company like this. Should I do that? And it's like, no, you're doing this, so focus on this, right? Like, you know, other people that have done this, right? So there's a ton of different things that you can do. But what a lot of people do is that they never focus on one thing long enough to actually make it successful, because they get into it. Once it gets a little bit hard, they go, oh, there's this other thing I can do. Oh, yep, let me go do this other thing. And then it's like a year, 2 years, 3 years of just trying out all these different things without becoming like really, really good and just completely focused on one thing.
Yeah, that is by far the biggest newbie mistake, but it's something everybody has to go through. I went through it for the longest time, and I just got so frustrated. At one point, I was like, I'm just going to do this one thing. And that's kind of how AIA became a thing, was just like, I was doing everything. I think I remember talking to you about this. I had like 5 different businesses going because all this passive income is going to make me rich and wealthy. And it's like, yeah, but you have 5 different things going. You have attention in so many different things. And eventually I just shut down everything. I was like, I'm just going to do this one thing. I'm going to teach these people one thing. And that's completely what blew up. And I think that's where a lot of people just don't really understand the power of focus. And we have a value inside our company that we're going to be getting some people to tattoo on them at a mastermind, voluntarily, of course, which is called
Voluntarily.
Simple Scales, Complex Fails. What does simple scales, complex fails mean to you?
I mean, it ultimately just means like the more simple a process is, the more likely you are to be able to scale it. And the more complex a process is, the more likely it is to fail, right? Because if you have too many moving parts, you have too many things that you have to focus on and try to figure out how to fix things, you're just so much more likely to fail, right? Versus like, for example, Tesla did something that was genius where they were the first to ever do it, but I don't know exactly what it's called, but like the underbody of the car, like I don't even know what it's called. Nobody had ever done it before, to my knowledge, but they made like this mass printer to save money and also to make it better to make it better, make it more of them, make it faster, make it cheaper. But they started like printing the bottom of the cars where everything used to be like you had to weld like all these different pieces to it. Not only was it more likely to fail, like it had more parts that you had to do. So if one person missed a weld one place, so their recalls on that part of the car was much higher if they put it all together, but nobody had ever thought just to simplify the process and actually just like literally just print the bottom of the car because they're like, oh, it's too big, it's too expensive, like all this stuff. So once they actually simplified that process, they could scale it like infinitely. They could just print like pieces of this car that nobody had ever done before, which allowed them to make it cheaper, which allowed them to make more of it, which allowed them to be more profitable. It's the same thing with business, right? It's like, whether it's your team, like some people are like we were talking about with like delegating is like, it's not like if you can do it yourself, right? If you can do like these parts of the business yourself where you know how to market and you know how to close and you know how to set and you know how to set up some of these systems and you know how to do the fulfillment, well, that simplifies it for you because you're not relying on anybody that could potentially fail. So even if you are relying on them, you can always step in and fix it, right? You can always step in and replace them. So it's the same thing with like, whether it's advertising or even sales. Like I've seen people jump on calls and they have a 70-page like pitch deck or something like that. And it's like super complex and it's just overwhelming everybody on that call versus just simplifying it down to either just a one-on-one conversation or just a simple, like most of the conversation happening one-to-one and then maybe 2 or 3 pages, right? They just over-complex, like complexity. They complexify? Like I can't come up with the word.
They complexify complex. We're making up new words here, but I agree 100%. It all comes down to just how simple can your stuff be? Because the more complex it is, it might work for you as a person or a 5 to 10 person company, but as soon as you start bringing more people in there, shit is going to break. And one thing that I do, and I know you do a really good job of this as well, is like whenever I build a system, I don't publish the first system. I go back through it a couple more times, 3 to 5 times, depending on how complex it is. I'm like, how can I simplify this? So like right now, we're building something that I'm not going to go into too much detail right now, but it's going to completely change the game. Literally going to be changing the game. So depending on when you're seeing this, the game might already be changed, but it's going to be a game changer. And it's taken a lot of my time and mental focus, but it's a lot of systems and a lot of back-end developers and stuff that we're hiring. I'm not going to go into all the details, but point being is the first version was super complex that, yeah, it worked for me, but I'm trying to dummy it down. How can I make this work for someone that works at Walmart? That's how my always question is, if I can make this work for someone that works at Walmart, well, guess what? My company can scale because then I can only teach someone that has a Walmart IQ how to build and grow a business rather than having to teach, like, it's just so much more simple. So whenever you're building something, ask yourself, is this the most simple version of what I could build with this?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the same thing when, like what we were just talking about with hiring is like the more simple and straightforward the process is, like even we look at every single thing, like for example, hiring, like with a 7-figure company, like what we were talking about is like, it's possible to build a multiple 6-figure business by yourself or even with like one person. But to sustain a 7-figure company, like you need to have a team and you need to have a team of A players, right? So the same way that we think about like literally everything, the same way that we think about and critique sales, we think about and critique our fulfillment is the same way that we think about and critique our onboarding and hiring process, right? Like we take the same level of focus for making sure that we're not only bringing the right people in, but we're also simplifying the process for them to come into our team, absorb our systems, absorb our knowledge, absorb our culture, and then ultimately turn around and be able to deliver that for whatever position that they're actually in.
Yeah. I want to pivot a little bit off what you said there, because you brought something up, which I see as another big mistake, is those solo entrepreneurs. We've all been there. We've all done that. And I think if you are someone that has a skill set and you're making good money online, you deserve to have a team built around you, not only for the sake of your business and your clients, but also you're producing more jobs out there. I see people flexing all the time. Yeah, I've run this whole company by myself, and, you know, I keep 90% of the margin. I think that is unethical as fuck, if I'm being honest with you, because what happens if I pay you $10,000 and you get sick for a whole month? You're not going to deliver on that $1,000 or $10,000, right? Unless you have a perfectly outlined business. But chances are most of the people I know like that, they have some cookie cutter edge type system, and it's like, it's not fair for your clients. So my challenge for you, and this really opened the eyes for me, because I was like that for a long time. And then Grant Cardone, I was actually at his event. It might have been the one that you saw me at that sparked your interest to buy my stuff. But he came on stage and said, if you have a one-person team, you're just selfish. And it really hit me home with that, because it's true. It's like, why settle, right? Like, especially if you're making money or whatever it is, like, you can change the world. Us as entrepreneurs, we have so much opportunity out there. And I challenge everybody watching this is like, just don't settle. And I will be honest, I think management and leadership in business is probably one of the absolute hardest things to do. And it's not something you can read a book, you can take a course on and just learn. I think the real solution is being surrounded by people that are already doing it at a higher level. That's why I just dropped 55 grand on a mastermind, so I could see how they lead their team, which clearly it's been helping us out. We doubled our business from it. But I think it's also one of those things where it's like, you know, if you want your customers to be like you got to be constantly leveling up, or else your customers aren't going to be leveling up. Yeah.
I mean, it's also like, I remember I had like an epiphany moment where I was in Mexico. Like, this was a few years ago, but I was in Mexico and I got like Montezuma's Revenge or whatever. Like, I was super sick, and I saw like a stripe or something, like a payment come through from a closed deal. And it was like the first epiphany moment. Like, I was in bed all day long, but because at that point I had started to build a team, like, they were closing deals without me. And I was like, whoa, like, I'm sick. I'm in Mexico. I can't do anything today. And the business is actually making money without me being there. The other thing too is, like, there's also been times in the business where, or in my personal businesses, where things were kind of struggling and I was like, you know, not feeling super motivated, but also the understanding and knowledge that I had a team of people relying on me. Like, I could not show up, right? So, like, there's an extra level of motivation with that too. Is like, you know, I have these people that are relying on me. Like, I can't not show up this week. I can't, just because I don't feel like it today, right? So there's that other aspect of it too, is like, I truly want to make sure that, and the same thing with us, like, we talk about it a lot, is like, I want the people that are working for me to win. Like, I want the people that are working with me to also win, to realize their dreams, right? So, like, making sure that no matter who we're bringing in is not only the right fit for us, but like, we're the right fit for them. Like, that we can see that we're a part of their future, and not just like, oh, this person can fulfill this role. It's like, what does this person want? Like, and can we give this person what they want, and can we help them grow, right? So, like, that's part of the reason why our team culture is so good at AIA, is like, the people here genuinely want to be a part of the team, because they also know that the people at the top are looking out for everybody, right? And are caring about everybody, right? We want everybody to win. We want everybody to make money. We want everybody to grow. We want everybody to be happy. And that's why, like, the culture at this company is so great. And because of that, the company continues to grow and grow and grow, because there's only so much that one person can do. There's only so much that two people can do. But when you have 10 people all working at the same level, that are all A players, that all want to hang out with each other, like talking to each other, like working with each other, like, imagine how much more you can do when you have 10 of you all working in the business, all striving, all pushing, all love showing up to work with each other, like hanging out after work, going on trips to foreign countries, right? Like we do. It just makes, like, everything so much easier. And every time we do a trip with the team, everybody comes back so fired up, right? Like, it's just a unique thing when you have, like, a really good company culture. Like, you cannot scale by yourself. Like, you need to bring in, like, you need to build a team, and you need to build a good team culture. And that's actually one of the things that I've definitely learned from you, is like, I've been very good at, like, bringing in people and delegating certain things so that making sure that I can remove myself from the business if I need to. But definitely the one thing that I've learned from you is like people love working here. People want to work for you. People like the same for me, right? Like, but that's definitely the one thing that I've learned from you that I think is like a really solid leadership quality is that you've been able to not only attract the right people, but you also give people the freedom and space to succeed. Like you're not micromanaging everybody. You're letting people show up and you're giving them the opportunity. You're giving them the feedback. You're giving them the ability to grow as a human and as an individual within the company and not trying to stifle them and say, oh, no, you can't do this, or like, no, don't do that or do this, right? Like you're actually giving people the freedom to grow.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit because I think that's where a lot of people, they hit a wall and they can't grow, or at least something we hear a lot is like, yo, how do I manage a team? Like, how do I get people to perform like I want them to? And it's not an easy thing. It's something you got to learn as you grow and get. And that's why I always say is like, for people that are like, oh man, like I don't need a coach or anything. It doesn't have to be us. I'm just saying in general, you got to be around people that are higher in level than you. And you have to be paying those type of people or else they're not going to be giving you the information, right? So like, that's how I learned a lot of this. It wasn't just a book or a course. It was just like, okay, well, hey, here's money. Let me learn how you control your company. Hey, let me learn. And I put all that together. And I think that's a big part of like managing a team is exactly what you said is like, you know, you got to figure out your flow. It's kind of like an art. We always talk about with the sales team or the setting team or ads is like everything is like sales is an art. You got to figure out how you close a deal because everyone closes deals differently. But once you figure out what really flows for you, you blast off. And it's the same thing with how do you control your company? And for me, I did the approach of like trying to micromanage everyone for the longest time. And I absolutely went crazy because it just doesn't work. You have to give people their space. And the easy solution is going back to what we were talking about before is you got to know your numbers. If I can look at the numbers and see that you guys are performing, I'm gonna be like, okay, cool. I don't need to do anything. Like I can just manage it and answer any questions they have. And that's the same thing with sales. Like it gets to the point where is the sales team producing? Are they within KPI? I'm checking KPI every day. Where do I see them falling off? Hey, sales closer one. Hey, I noticed on your offer rate's a little bit down. You're not closing as much as you were last month. Let me check out your sales calls. Okay, cool. So you're not battling those two objections at the end. Let's try fixing that and see if we can fix that on the next one. Boom, close. So it's kind of just like taking a step back from micromanaging and just understanding the numbers don't lie. And if you look at the numbers and can understand numbers of what it takes to grow a business, that's how you grow a team without absolutely going crazy.
Yeah. So what would you say is like your favorite part about running the company now? Like what do you look forward to the most, or like what do you feel like has shifted maybe from like last year to this year? Like what's fun for you now?
I think you said it earlier. You know, it's at the point where the company, if I'm being honest, is producing a lot of great cash flow. So money's great, but that's not like the driving factor for me for life, right? Like my whole thing has always been freedom and having fun with what I do. And I think what you said is like just the community of not only just clients, but the team that we have, because I'll be honest, we have some weeks where it's like, dude, is everything broken? But it's the team that holds everybody together. He keeps them accountable. And I think when you are that one person team, it's like, it's very easy to psych yourself out and then just try doing the wrong thing. But like talking, I mean, we have something called CEO therapy where me and Alec just talk sometimes when shit's just not going good. And it's like, dude, what do we do here? What are your thoughts? This. So like, I think my answer to that is like, what really excites me is the team that we built, because, you know, everybody, it's like if sales is down, CSM is up and they're collecting cash. If CSM, their cash is down, then sales is up and they're producing cash. So it's like everything kind of balances each other out, and just like the ability to see stuff work as you like kind of take a step back and like put if you're playing chess, like your chess pieces out there is one of the greatest feelings in the world. Yeah.
So take to pause on the hiring, hiring that high level of talent, right? I remember when we did the first ever AIA mastermind in Fort Lauderdale, and we rented out this mansion. I remember we were like all sitting there like smoking cigars in the hot tub, and then Joe came to me, or he was saying like, yeah, I just remember this one call where Justin came, he called me, he was like, I just closed the biggest deal for AIA ever. Like I just got Alec to join the team. So take us through like, which, you know, that made me feel good, but take us through like when you're thinking about, even through the process of like reaching out to me, like to try to get me to join the team, like how do you bring in and attract like those the high level talent that can really, because it if somebody else is in my position that's maybe not me and is maybe not as motivated not able to pick things up or be able to be autonomous and be able to figure stuff out on my own, like it wouldn't be the same, right? Like you would be either working way more to get the same results or working the same amount but being constantly distracted by these other things that aren't going right that you then have to divert your focus to. So when you're looking to bring in, or even if you want to go back to like why you look to bring me in, like how do you look for high quality talent and like what's the process for like trying to bring them onto the team?
Yeah, well, I think it all comes down to one thing is if you're looking for A player talent on your team, you have to be an A player. And if you're a B player, you can't attract an A player. It's like sharks. They can smell the bullshit a mile away. Like if I was just half-assing my business and I was like, yo, bro, let me figure out, let me get you in my team, get you to stop doing what you're doing, not even shut down your own company, just stop focusing on your company and just work for me. And I was a B player, you'd be like, bro, why would I do that? But you saw growth, you saw projection with what I had, and you saw where this business could go. So I think it comes down to just kind of like what we were talking about before is you've got to be able to dial in every aspect of your business because just as like, if everybody on this team quit, which would be the worst thing, I would hate it. I don't know, but I could do everything if I wanted to. And I know you could do that in my company too, because we've already done that type of stuff. And it's A players attract A players. If you want A players, you have to be an A player. If you're not attracting A players, well, you got to take a look in the mirror. I see a lot of times people go, well, I just can't get my employee to perform. And this is like, they show up on a coaching call once every like 3 weeks. Okay, well, how are you performing? Oh, I'm doing good. I'm doing this. I'm like, dude, you're just not performing. If you want your team to perform, you have to perform. You can't take vacations from your business. Like you can't be like, oh, 1 week I'm in, 1 week I'm out. I'm going to go travel the world. I'm going to do all that. You can travel the world and do it, but you have to have the right systems in play. And you have to have the right structure in play to do that. But like, you can't just be that type of person that's half in, half out. And another value kind of to sum all this up that we have is 99% is a bitch, 100% is a breeze. Meaning if you're not 100% in on what you're doing, get the fuck out and find something that you're 100% all in on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is like, I think one of the favorite things is like when somebody's like, yeah, I really want this person to stay on my team. And like, I really like them. And I was like, but I don't know what I can do with them, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all right, do you know how much money they want to make? No. Okay, do you know what they care about? No, not really. And I was like, okay, go figure out how much money they need to make, how much money they want to make, what they care about, what they like, and then try to help them get more of that by being with you, right? Like if that's one of the things with like keeping a player talent, right, is what you're talking about too, is like going back to one of my favorite books on leadership is like Extreme Ownership. Like I cannot expect and demand somebody to operate at an A level if I am not willing to operate and demand at that level, right? You lead by example, right? So if all the people in the team are being demanded to have A player like level traits, we use A player a lot, right? A player, B player, C player. So, we're going to repeat ourselves a lot with that. But if I want somebody to be an A player, I have to operate as an A player. Even if I am an A player or whatever, like I need to show up consistently. And even if I did want to, which I have done, I have traveled the world while running the business. Even if I did want to do that, I would need to empower the people that are below me to be able to realize their dreams. I wouldn't like bring in somebody to be like, oh, you are, let's say, a client success manager. I'm going to dip out for a month and like you're responsible for the entire fulfillment. Like, no, they're there for a role unless you want to empower them to, ultimately be your director of operations or whatever, and also get paid according to that. But like, I've seen people that like come through and they just like, their sales goes completely down and then they wonder why. And it's because they're paying a salesperson a commission to be a salesperson. They're paying a setter a commission to be a setter. And then they're just expecting, okay, like these guys got it. Like, and they just stop leading them, but they're just being paid to do their job. Like they're not being paid any more or any less. Like if they start running the entire sales system for you, then ultimately you should pay them to do that because they're no longer just a sales rep at that point.
I think to kind of sum that up is you got to do the shit you don't want to do. I hate reviewing sales calls, but I still do it. I hate going through DM messages with the SETI team, but I still do it. It's just, you got to put your ego aside. You got to put your feelings aside and understand, like, you're running a business. It's not supposed to be about what you want to do all day, every day. It's you sacrifice to do the hard shit so you can, like we did, go to Europe and travel for 3 weeks while your business still hit record months.
Yeah.
It doesn't all happen overnight, but you got to do the hard shit that most people aren't willing to do. And I think that's what it really comes down to when it comes to running a business. If I had to sum it up, is like, get out of your own way, do the hard shit, and just focus and find one person that can get you to where you want to be.
Yeah, I remember one of my mentors when I was starting out made me do this this exercise where I asked the 5 people that I thought that knew me best, like what they liked about me, what they thought that, you know, I could improve, like basically like critical feedback. And then also he sent me like a text, like, text them this too, which is basically like, you know, I love you. I'm not going to take any of this personally. Like, just give me your complete honest feedback. I remember my dad, he said, he's like, you're like, and this was a few years ago, but he's like, you're incredibly smart. You're incredibly driven and hardworking at the things that you want to do. But when it comes to things that you don't want to do, you just don't do them, and it holds you back. And I remember being like, damn, like,
wow,
maybe I shouldn't have sent that text about not taking it personally, but I was like, and I was like, it like really was like, and that was like the type of thing that I like needed to know though, because I really thought about it, and I was like, it was true, because I remember at the time I was struggling in my business because like I didn't want to take sales calls, like I like it was all of these things that I didn't want to do, like because I wasn't a natural born salesperson, so I would avoid certain things that I didn't want to do like the plague. And then once I just realized like there's just stuff, if I really want this business to succeed, I'm not only going to have to work really hard at the things that I actually want to do, like I'm also going to have to work really hard at the things that I don't want to do. And ultimately those things probably became things that I did want to do. And then there was a new list of things that I didn't want to do that I also had to do. Right. So I remember that. And, you know, shout out my dad for giving me actual like critical feedback there, because I actually took it and I utilized it. And it was a huge piece that was holding me back for years. And then once I just made that realization, like sometimes you just got to do the hard shit. Like there's just no way around it. Like obstacle is the way.
Obstacle is the way. It's a great book. Exactly what you said. Sometimes it's just one piece of advice that can change the entire trajectory of your life. So I want to wrap it up here with one question for both of us on here. What is the number one thing you think people need to implement or not implement in order to hit 7 figures and beyond in their business?
Number one thing that people need to implement or not implement to hit 7 figures in their business. I mean, honestly, like I think it really does, because I mean, it's one, like we were talking about, like, and I tell people this in AIA, is that ultimately you need to lead by example. So if I would say for one thing to implement, you probably have to start scheduling out like everything, right? Like you probably like you have to wake up at a certain time, go to bed at a certain time, and then also schedule in all of your activities. You schedule in your times for creativity. You schedule in your times, and you really have to think forward to understand going into your week, going into your day, to be proactive and be on the offense rather than on the defense. Because once you start getting into calls, or maybe if you feel less motivated at certain periods of time, okay, schedule yourself so that when your energy dips, you're doing things that you don't need high energy for, right? But you know, okay, these are the times that I'm the most creative. I'm going to schedule these things. Honestly, I would say that would be definitely one of the things, like definitely at the top of the list of things that I would implement.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. For mine, I've got 2 words: consistency, scales. I think exactly what you said, but just doing it and staying consistent with it, because most people fall off. It's what you do today. You're not going to see immediate results most of the time tomorrow. You're going to see results down the road. And looking back, we started AIA 3 years ago at this point, give or take. And everything that I did from those points of saying no to things that weren't going to move me forward, and then just staying focused and getting rid of my own emotion and just staying consistent, has gotten us to the point where we're at now. So I think a lot of people struggle with that, is just not seeing the consistency behind it and saying, oh, well, something's not working, I'm going to change it up. It's no, don't tweak it up. Like, just fix what's not working, stay consistent, It's a straight line theory. You're up, you're down, you're up, you're down. But as long as you're staying consistent with it, at the end of the day, you're going to get where you want to be.
Yeah, I would say then onto that point there.
Bonus round.
Well, I was going to say the number one thing I wouldn't do. The number one thing I wouldn't do, and this was also a huge point that changed me, but the number one thing that I would not do if I wanted to build a 7-figure business would be to expect immediate results for literally anything that I do. Like, I changed my mindset to thinking 90 to 120 to 150 days out on literally anything. Fitness, business, anything I was going to put energy into, I was going to decide ahead of time that I was going to commit to something for 3 to 6 months before deciding on whether it's the right thing to do or not, or even just expecting results from it. Like, I remember working so hard for like a week or a month at something and being like, oh man, like I'm not getting clients or I'm not making money. And I would just crush myself over and over again because I was expecting results. And it's just like, once I changed the mindset around actually putting in the time and delaying that gratification, that's when I saw results.
That's good. And we'll wrap it up after this, but there was a book from John Maxwell, 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. And the one thing he says in there that completely changed my life with what you're saying is, however long you expect something to happen, at minimum, double it. So if you think it's going to take you 2 hours to create an ad, double it and schedule that. And it's the same thing with business growth. If you think you're going to hit 100K months in, 4 months, expect 8 months. And then guess what? If you hit it on month 5, you're excited. So Alec, I appreciate you coming through here, man. This was kind of on the fly, everybody, but I think hopefully you guys found some valuable information. And, clearly on this page, people know where to follow me at Justin J. Saunders on Instagram. Where can they follow you on Instagram at?
At the moment, Social Media Cowboy.
Social Media Cowboy. We've got, we're working on getting his other Instagram account back. If we get that, we'll drop it down below. But my man, it's been a pleasure. If you guys like this, let us know in the comments and maybe we'll come out with some more in the future.
See you in the future.